Hi, welcome to my channel. How are you doing today? I hope this video finds you well. So I am coming at you today with a video to talk about a sustainable writing schedule and creating one for yourself. So if you watched my video on my mid-year check-in, you know that I talked about being in burnout and digging myself out of that. I talked about all my planners that I had that were there to support me in digging myself out of the pit of burnout. And one of the things that I have been working on is creating myself a sustainable writing schedule, because at the end of the day, I still have to write because that is what I do full time, and if I don't write, I don't pay the bills, kind of thing. But my writing schedule is probably one of the biggest things that got me into burnout. So I get up super early, and one of the things I've been doing that got me into burnout is I get up super early, I spend all day writing. I'm talking 12 hours writing, sometimes 13, sometimes 14, 15 hours. So I was literally writing from when I got up to when I went to bed. And then what I've been finding I was doing once I was in bed, because I'd not had any downtime, I was lying in bed and watching Netflix, which would mean I was going to sleep very late, which meant I was waking up tired because I'd not had enough sleep, and got myself into this horrible cycle. And then the more tired I got, the harder it was to work through the day. So the more hours I worked to try and make up for that, which meant the longer I was working in the office, which meant the later I got to bed. And you see, this cycle was terrible for me. So I know I need a better writing schedule. The other habit I have is, or had, that I'm not gonna do for myself now, was if I had a super sleep and I managed to get to bed on time, get up early, and I was super focused on my writing and had it all done by 5 o'clock in the evening, which meant I had the evening to myself, I would be like, okay, so now I can go and do some of my downtime things. And then I would literally sit and not do any of them, and I would try, but it was like I would have this immense guilt because, you know, maybe I finish work at 5 and I'm going to bed at 9, leaves me 4 hours, and I would just have this guilt. Well, you've got 4 hours, you could go and do some work, you could do some admin, go and work on your marketing, go and create a new advert, go and make some TikToks. And this was one of the red flags for me that I was in burnout, because I was getting into this never giving myself any downtime, which is not good at all. So I'm going to create myself a writing schedule. The reason I'm doing this now is because I gave myself the month of July off to do things like tidy up some bits in the house, you know, things that needed sorting out, go and do some little admin bits that had all piled up that I've not done, just go and do some things and just have an easy month of July where I'm not stuck with work. But I do have to write, because obviously this is my day job. So it was like August, gonna get back to it. But I do not want to get back to those terrible writing schedules where I am just burning myself out again, because that is not going to serve me at all. So one of the things is deciding my writing daily word count goal. So writing goals are very personal to you, and yours might not necessarily be a word count goal. It could be a pages written goal, it could be an hours written goal, it might just be a goal to have written that day. You don't even have to have a number on it. I know for me, what works the best is to have a numbers daily word goal for me to achieve. And the amount of words you write in a day, like I said, is very personal to you. Authors like Michael Crichton used to write 10,000 words a day. An author like Stephen King, he used to write 2,000 words a day, but I think he's cut it down to 1,000. You've got Ian McEwan, who writes, I think he writes about 500 words a day, and then Thomas Wolfe was 150 words a day. So as you can see, word count goals are very personal, and your word count goal is very personal to you. And I was recently reading Stephen King's On Writing book, and he talks about his word count goal, and he says that some days he's got his 2,000 words by 11 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes he's sitting at his desk at 5 o'clock in the evening having missed lunch and still not got his 2,000 words. But what Stephen King does is he treats the writing as a day job, because it is, for me, it's a full-time job. I don't know if it is for you. It might not be. It might be a part-time job, might still be a hobby phase. So it's deciding for yourself your word count goal and how you are going to schedule that goal through your day. And that's what I want to talk about, because a writing schedule is hugely going to be dependent on what you are trying to do through the day. So the first thing you have to do is actually find your word count goal. Now, you could pull a number out of a hat and write that down, and that's your goal. And if you are like me, you would pull a high number out of your head and then try to hit it every single day and really struggle with that, and that wouldn't get us anywhere. So what I have been doing, because I do track my word count every day. I have data. I have years and years of data on how many words I've written per day. And this is just because I am somebody who likes numbers. I like spreadsheets. Tracking my word count daily is what motivates me. However, if you are not one of these people, I would suggest just tracking your word count for the purpose of deciding what your word count goal is. So do this for a minimum of a week, but my suggestion would be to do it for a month. Write every day and track your numbers, but write without judgment, without plans, without an idea of what you want to write. Don't have a goal, literally just write. And so it depends on what you do in your day. If you have a job, if you have someone you have to care for, write as you normally would. And at the end of every day, mark down how many words you got per day. And it can be easy to, while we're doing this, to try and achieve really high word count goals, but don't get into that habit, because you're just going to set yourself up to have a high goal that you cannot sustain for weeks, months, years at a time. So what we want to do here for this month is take a snapshot of your daily writing and how many words you actually do write. And I want you, after you've done this, is to work out your daily average. So for every day that you wrote, so you might not write every day. So if you wrote for 30 days, add it all up, divide it by 30, that's your average word count. If you only wrote for 10 of the days, add all those numbers up and divide it by 10. And that's your average daily word count. And obviously some days you're going to get more than that, and sometimes you're going to get less than that, and that's okay. But you need to work out what your daily average is. The other one is writing every day, and you'll often see this thrown around, but it gets kind of misworded. So when I talk about writing every day, I am talking about writing on every day that is a writing day. So not every day is a writing day, because you might not write on your birthday, you might not write when you go away on holiday, you might not write on a day where you have a 16-hour shift, and you might not write the day after because you're too tired. So what I'm talking about on write every day to work out your goal is to write every day that is a writing day for you. So to figure out your writing days, you need to figure out when in the month you are going to write. So what I like to do, now I do this at a quarter level, so I do this for 3 months at a time. You could just do it for a month. Is I will get the calendar, and I have for a long time taken Sundays off. So on my calendar I put a cross through every single Sunday. Some days I will work on the Sunday, but a lot of times I won't. This is the day I will go and do the food shopping. I might go out for a coffee with my husband. I might just go out for the day. It's when everybody is kind of off work. I might catch up on some housework. I might just have a lazy day on the sofa watching Netflix. I might go see my daughter. You know, it's just, I make sure I have a day every week, and Sunday is the day for me. So on my calendar, work out when I can write. I will cross out every single Sunday. I will then go through the months and check off any days that I know I can't write because I have commitments. So for example, in August, I know I'm going out with a friend on Saturday, and I know I'm not going to get to write any of that day, because normally on a Saturday I write in the afternoon just because that's how it works for me. But I know that I'm going to be getting ready to go out, then I'm going to go out. Obviously Sunday is a day off, so I don't count that. So I'm going to cross that Saturday off. I don't have any other commitments on in August. However, if this was September, I'm going away, so I would cross all those days off and plan not to write. And this is what I say to you to do. Get a calendar, cross off the days that you know you're not going to write. So say you have a 30-day month and you mark off 4 days off for the Sundays. So that takes you down to 26. And then say there's a birthday in that month, so you take that off. So that takes you down to 25. And say you have a couple of days getaway, so you take that off, and that leaves you with 23 writing days. That's okay. That's what I do every month. But what I also do when I've taken all these days off is I get my total number of writing days. So in this example it's 23, and then I take another 3 days off, and they are buffer days, mental health days, they are whatever days, which will leave me to 20. And the reason I take these 3 days off is because you cannot predict what's going to happen in your month. You may get sick. You may not be feeling very well, your car might break down, you might have to go somewhere, there could be an emergency, somebody could invite you out to a day out and you go. They are just there as a 3 get out of jail free cards that you can go, okay, I'm having this day off because that's one of my buffer days. So that leaves you 20 days for the month. So when I am talking about writing every writing day, what I am talking about is writing every day of those 20 days. And that's what you need to do do when you are trying to work out your word count goal. Another thing to figure out for your writing schedule is figuring out when is the best time of day for you to write. And that will be probably dependent on your life and your personal circumstances. Years ago when I had young children at home and I had a full-time job in an office that was not my writing, I was out of the house until 6 o'clock every single day, Monday to Friday. And then when the children were home, they obviously needed things like feeding and bathing and time and attention and help with homework. They were generally in bed for about 8:30. So I would have from about 9 o'clock till 11 was my writing time. And so the best time of writing for me was 2 hours Monday to Friday, 9 till 11, just because that was life. Young children, it's impossible to write on the weekend, so that was my circumstance at the time. Now it's completely different. Children are all grown up, they're all moved out. Writing is my job, so my writing time varies. And for this one, your best time for writing might depend on your life and circumstances, and it might be dictated by outside factors like mine used to be. However, it could also be just dictated by when is the best time for you to write. So depending on which one you're in is how you will figure out the best time for you to write. So now I'm a full-time writer. I have tested this, and if you are able to, I would suggest you test this. Do a few days of writing in the morning, do a few days of writing in the evening, and do a few days of writing in the afternoon or other times of the day, and actually see which brings you the best creative work. Now, because I was writing in the evening because my life dictated that, I thought that I was a night writer because that was when I sat down and wrote. And what I used to find is I would sit at my desk at 9 o'clock and I would just be flooded with creativity, and the words would flow and I would write for these 2 hours and they would be fantastic. I now know that the reason for this is because one, I'd formed a habit, so my writing brain was activated. Two, during the other times of the day I was consuming a lot of creative media. So I used to read a lot. Most of that was it. I used to read a lot, but I did used to game as well, and so it was always feeding the well. And because I wasn't writing but I was always thinking about writing, that was fueling it. So as life's changed and I've become a full-time writer, what I actually realised is that my most creative time is actually in the morning, and the best time for writing for me is if I get up, make a coffee and go straight to my office, so not even stopping for breakfast. If I can capture that first hour of my waking day writing, it is super creative and it sets me up, and then I can go and get dressed and make breakfast and do all that stuff and I'll still be creative. But I know for me that going from sleep to the page is my perfect creative activation mode, if you get what I mean. But it could vary for you, so like I say, test it, see what works, play around with it, keep track of it, write how you feel, how the words were flowing, even like create a little diary, write every day what time you wrote and how it felt, and try and figure out what works best for you. So actually creating the writing schedule, so obviously you've got to do the word count, you've got to figure out how many days you're going to work or can work, and you've also got to figure out what time of day you're going to write or can write, your restrictions. So I know for me that my word goal is going to be about 2,000 words per day. I know that majority of the time it's going to be writing in the morning, but there are a couple of days I write a bit later. I also know that on average I have about 23 writing days per month. However, the other thing your writing schedule might be dependent on, and it depends what you are doing, is your project and how many words that is, and a deadline if you have a deadline for your project. So your project will feed it into your schedule because it depends what you're writing. If you are writing a 1,000 word short story, you don't need to write 2,000 words a day for a month. If you are writing a 100,000 word story, novel, then 2,000 words is great. So it all depends on what your project is and what you're trying to achieve with this writing schedule, because your writing schedule isn't set in stone. It moves and it changes with you. I try and look at mine kind of like on a quarterly basis, and I know what projects I've got coming up because obviously I'm a working writer. For you, it might be totally different. The other one is deadline. You might not have a deadline, or you might only have a self-imposed deadline that you've said I want to finish by this date, or you might actually have a publishing deadline. So in June last month I had to get Jigsaw finished and uploaded because it was due for publication in the end of June, so I had to have it finished and I was behind, and writing 2,000 words a day just wasn't going to cut it with the words I had, because I actually only had 16 writing days that month because we also had a family holiday booked. So I had to fit my writing schedule schedule that month to the needs of the book and the needs of my project rather than my mental needs. I did know that if I was really struggling, I was just going to have to push the book back, which I did push. We did push it back by 3 days, but that's just how it is. The other thing I would say about deadline is sometimes, like I say, the deadline's going to decide your word, dictate your word count, and this is probably my least favourite way of creating my writing schedule, but sometimes this is just how you have to do it. So like I said, in June I had 16 writing days and I had to get this book finished, and there was a lot of words I had to write it. So what I worked out as was on my 16 writing days I would have to write about 5,000 words a day, which I know is higher than my 2,000. This is partly why I decided to take July off to give myself a break. But this was 16 days, so I had to schedule in extra writing sessions in extra time. So on my Sundays that I take off for June, for the purposes of catching up, I scheduled myself to be writing 1,000 words on those days. 1,000 words for me only takes half an hour, so it's not so bad. And I had to try not to have my buffer days. So this is really why I wouldn't try and fit your schedule around the amount of words you have to write unless you have a long time, because it can get to the point where if you miss a day then you are behind. So if you, for example, NaNoWriMo, you write 50,000 words in a month, that's 1,667 words in a day for 30 days. Say that was your book that you were publishing and you have 3 days off because you got a cold and you're in bed and you're feeling pretty crappy. You are about 4,000 words behind. So this is why I would say only really build your word count on your book goal and deadline if you absolutely have to, because that just is what led me to feeling a little bit burnt out. But you can do it. I would just be careful if you do. So sticking to your schedule. So with all of this, you should have a schedule. So for me, I'm going to write 2,000 words per day. I know what my project is. It's a rewriting project. I know when it needs to be finished. It needs to be finished in about October time. So August, September, October. So I've got 3 months. I know that it's going to be approximately 90,000 words. That's 30,000 words across the 3 months. So I know 2,000 words a day per writing day goes into that. I also know what days I'm going to write because I know what are my writing days because I've marked them all off in my calendar, and I know when I'm going to write because I literally do have a timetable per day, and I've got it from like 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. So like we have wake and sleep, and then in between I have marked off the engagements I have that I know I have every week that I cannot write because I have those appointments. But sticking to the schedule is one of the things about having a sustainable schedule, because we can make all these schedules, but if you don't stick to it, it's going to fall apart. And the main thing I'm going to say about this is forming yourself a habit. Most of the schedules I've created for myself have worked because I have made myself have some habits. So Stephen King gets to his desk at 8 o'clock every morning, has his vitamin pill there and a glass of water, and he writes. When I was talking about working full time and how I used to get to my desk at 9 o'clock and the words will flow, that was because I had a habit. And so having a habit is what gets your brain into the word mode. And so what I'm going to say with this is, when you've got your writing schedule, treat it like a super important meeting that you cannot cancel. So if you have set yourself 2 hours on a Monday and the only reason that you're not going to write for those 2 hours is because they've dropped a new episode of your favourite show on Netflix, would you cancel a work meeting for that reason? You probably wouldn't. Would you cancel a dinner date with your friend's spouse? No, you probably wouldn't, because you'd watch it later. And the same is with your writing. You have to make it important. You have to make it a habit. You have to get out of this place where you're like, oh, shall I write or shall I not? No, you've made that date with yourself and you need to stick to that. And the only reason you should cancel is if you would cancel on something that is super important. Writing is super important, and it's getting that into your head that it is super important, and that will help you stick to your schedule. One thing that works for people, it doesn't necessarily work for me, is having a reward system. The word count goal and hitting that is my reward, and it gives me my hit. But other people do need a reward system, and maybe you do too. So you could set yourself a reward. If I write every single writing day and stick to my schedule, at the end of the month I get to go and fill in the blank. Go to my favourite coffee shop, go for dinner at my favourite restaurant, whatever it is. So writing schedule, have some kind of reward built into that for yourself if you can, especially if you're at the newer stage or just trying to establish your habits. Anyway, that is me. I'm sorry, I always feel like these are a bit of a ramble afterwards, but maybe they're not, maybe they make sense. But this is how I'm digging myself out of burnout, is getting this writing schedule set down for myself and sticking to that. And when I say sticking to that, so I talked about turning up for the meeting. But if you're anything like me, you also have to leave the meeting. So if I have a 2-hour writing schedule, say I'm going to write from 9 to 11 in the morning, I have to stick to that schedule because I've pre-planned. I know that it's important only to write for the 2 hours. So I have the other problem. I will turn up at 9 o'clock, but I will still be there at 9 o'clock at night, even though I said I could only write for 2 hours, and I will cancel everything else that I can cancel in my life to do that, and then I will try and play catch up, and then I will not get to bed on time, and then I will be tired, and then Saturday is just a mess. So sticking to your writing schedule is both ways. 1, it's turning up, and 2, it's turning off when you said you would, and it's this discipline, and that is what I am going to do for myself for the rest of this quarter and with this writing schedule. But I hope that helped. If you have any questions or I've missed anything about creating writing schedule, pop them down below and I'll see if I can give you a hand and help you, because I have lots of practice doing this with myself. Like I said, I have tracked my words counts for years. But other than that, take care of yourself. I hope this was helpful. Don't forget to give this video a good old thumbs up. Smash that notification bell so you get notified every time I make a video, and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.